Hey, everybody, this is Chris
and Kathy
from Petability Podcast. We wanted to take a minute to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate every listener and are grateful for this platform.
Please help us share our vision by subscribing to Petability Podcast through your favorite streaming app. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Petability Podcast and share our content on social media.
You can also support the show by making a donation. Simply go to our website at petabilitypodcast.buzzsprout.com and click on the heart symbol at the top of the page. Thanks for listening.
We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Petability. I'm your host, Kathy Simons.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston. Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
I am so pleased about our interview today, Chris. I know that we talk so much about differently able dogs on our show and their ability to adapt to their situation, whether it be a sensory impairment or a mobility impairment, right?
Right.
And I realize that I have an affinity for what some people might call, the underdog. But that's why I'm so excited today to highlight this family and their dogs. They have not one, not two, but three two-legged dogs. Little Cyrus, cute little thing, cute little guy, only has hind limbs. Lucky, the dog with only front limbs, and Deuce, who has a right front and right hind limb. I was delighted to find them on Instagram, and I follow like 1,000 animals on Instagram, all with some level of impairment. But I just find these guys incredible, and they bring me so much happiness to my day, and I'm blown away with their determination, their persistence, and their sheer joy, right? They truly are living their best lives. So, and I'm not the only one who feels that way. They have over 50,000 followers who are following two-leg dogs, the number two-leg, Legdogs dogs. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce today Domenick Scudera.
Hello,
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so happy to talk with you.
Well, we're, as Kathy said, very excited to have you. And one of the first questions that I have, Domenick, is it seems as though you may have some sort of mission or message that you're trying to get out there through your special furry family. You agreed to talk with us without hesitation. You seem to jump on the opportunity to do this podcast, for which we're very, very grateful. But can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I really do feel that the dogs carry a message, and each of my dogs is trained and certified as a therapy dog. So they, in addition to living their best lives at home, they also visit people in hospitals every week. And at the moment, because of the pandemic, we're not able to do that. So I welcome the opportunity to be able to share the special message of the dogs online or on a podcast, or whoever might be able to hear or see them. I do find them to be special, and a lot of people tell me they're inspiring. So I'm happy to talk to anyone that wants to know more.
They really are inspiring. Domenick, can you tell us a little bit about each one of them?
Sure. The one I've had the longest is Cyrus. He is the smallest one. He's about 10 or 11 years old. Cyrus is originally from California. He's a Terrier mix, and he was born without front legs. And I adopted him because at the time that I found him on a site for pets with disabilities, he was up for adoption. At that time, I also had a three-legged dog whose name was Festus. Festus has since passed. But Festus was my first differently abled dog, and he was a therapy dog that I worked with and brought to a number of hospitals, including the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So I was looking for another special dog that might be able to share that responsibility with Festus. And Cyrus was the perfect fit because he's a sweet little cute dog who has a little...
So cute.
Yeah, he has a little wheelchair, and he does now visit the Children's Hospital. He's very popular there in Philadelphia, and he also goes to Bryn Mawr Rehab Hospital. They have an amputee clinic, so we meet a lot of people who have lost their limbs and are learning how to walk again, usually. So he was sort of the first of the two-legged dogs that I adopted. The second is Lucky. Lucky is about 4 or 5 years old now. Lucky is originally from Egypt. He was a street dog on the streets outside of Cairo, and he had apparently been hit by a car and left to die on the streets. And unfortunately, from what I understand, the culture in Egypt is not one to take care of animals that are out on the street like that. But there are some good people in Egypt that care greatly for animals, and one of them, her name is Marwa, she rescued Lucky. She fought for him to live. She brought him to the doctors. His back legs were eventually amputated, and then he was sent to the United States for a better life.
That's why they call him Lucky, probably, right?
She named him Lucky,
Lucky guy.
And we kept that name. So Marwa told me, I am in touch with her, and she told me that when she first found him, he was dead. That was how she expressed it. So he really is lucky to have found her. Right. And then we're just so happy he's now in our lives in the United States.
Yeah.
And then the last of those 3 two-legged dogs is Deuce. And Deuce is about 3 years old. He is originally from Kentucky. And he was rescued by an organization called Camp Jean. And the woman who runs that organization, her name is Jean. And Jean felt that Deuce was very special, and he truly is, because his legs also had to be amputated, his left legs. And he is amazing, very unusual to be able to have such strength and balance on only one side. He has hardly any mobility issues. And she felt that he was so inspiring that he should also be a therapy dog. So she went online and Googled two-legged therapy dogs. And if you do that, you're going to end up finding me.
Find Domenick in his picture. Yeah.
The champion of two-legged therapy dogs.
Yeah, so she did find me, and she reached out to me and said, I have this special dog. Do you think I'm looking for a home that, with someone that might be able to take care of his special needs. And I'd love for him to be a therapy dog. And so initially I hesitated because I have so many dogs. I also have 3 other dogs and 3 cats.
Wow!
Oh my goodness.
So, but he was
You're our kind of people, Domenick, I just want to say, yeah.
He was just so special, and I had to say yes. And Gene actually drove all the way from Kentucky to Pennsylvania, brought him here, and he has been just amazing. He is... just visually, people are just arrested when they see him. He's just so different and special. Yeah. And so he does, he's sort of a visible symbol of being able to overcome adversity.
First of all, when I look at Deuce, because I follow these guys on Instagram, and they're amazing. But as a rehab practitioner, I look at him and I go, how? Wow. Because the ability to walk with only the right front and the right hind limb, it must take a tremendous amount of core strength and, like you said, Domenick, balance. So from like a rehab perspective, or somebody who sees animals who are, have some type of impairment, mobility impairment, I'm thinking, wow, this dog really is special. Plus, he's a little goofy, which I really enjoy.
He really is.
A little goofy, which also brings me great joy. But it's very impressive. It's very impressive.
Domenick, did Jean name him Deuce, or did you name him Deuce?
She named him Deuce, and we kept that name. All of our dogs were named by somebody else. They arrived.
That I just think that's just a nod to, again, his abilities. And my father really appreciates that because he's a card player. So, you always have the Deuce. So. All right. So you mentioned a little bit, Domenick, about their work as therapy dogs, and that all three are certified. Mm-hmm. Can you speak a little bit more as to why you think that these three are especially able to connect with the patients there? Because I also have a therapy dog, and it's great, and she's fully able-bodied, but I would appreciate that another being that is differently able might just be a touchstone just a little bit more. So
yes, I mean you can tell the impact that the dogs have almost instantaneously when you walk in a hospital. So I hear, at least a dozen times a day, someone will say, he's just like me, or if he can do it, I can do it. The connection is instant, and people just feel when they see these dogs that you can just tell that they must have gone through something very difficult to be able to get to this moment. And then dogs don't have any capacity to think about the past. So they're not carrying anything with them in terms of their mental state that tells them that they are different or that they can't do something. And so when someone takes a look at this sort of happy, joyous dog walking and running, and you're also learning how to walk again, maybe with one less leg or something like that, mm-hmm. it I hope makes the patients feel that they might be able to get through this tough time also. And they tell me that all the time.
Yes. And also those that are using assistive devices, I imagine it's inspiring mm-hmm. to them, like whether it's a wheelchair or crutches or a walker, what have
yes.
you. That has to be relatable.
Especially the children at the children's hospital. Many of the kids that we visit are in wheelchairs or have some kind of help in their mobility, and they love to see, especially little Cyrus and his little wheels, because it just, it's funny because when we look at an animal in a wheelchair, we think, oh, that's so cute. And yet a person in a wheelchair, we realize that the challenges they must be facing to be in that chair. But a dog, we just think, oh, that's so great. And so hopefully on some level it makes people feel like I can overcome this and have a great life too.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you touched on the fact that these dogs don't have baggage about their disability, right? They just carry on. And I really want to say kudos to the veterinarian who did the amputation for Lucky and for Deuce, because there may be some veterinarians out there who may have said, I don't think that this is going to work, right?
That's right.
And somebody saw the value in their lives, right? So that's important. And I think, particularly for these guys, I think it's so important that they're out there and that they're dispelling these, maybe some misconceptions about amputations in animals, in that, maybe dogs can't function without a missing limb, or maybe they feel sad without a missing limb, but they don't. In fact, it's just the opposite. So a dog that has a painful limb or a limb that's non-functioning is a burden, right? And in Deuce's, I think it was Deuce that had the infection, and in his case, it was a life-threatening situation where he had to have them removed. So dogs don't have that baggage. And in fact, taking that missing limb or that limb that's painful, non-functional, or life-threatening off improves their quality of life. It makes it better, not worse. And
I always say that a dog doesn't know what they don't have; they only know what they do have.
What they have. My dog only knows when it's dinner time, Domenick. Like, yes. That's all he knows. But it makes me think back. Very early on in my career, my very first patient I saw that had to have an amputation was a dog that had a pretty devastating neurologic injury to one of her front limbs. And ultimately, that leg did have to be amputated. She was depressed. She didn't want to eat. She was sort of dragging that limb and it needed to be removed. And this was
Kathy, I didn't mean to interrupt, but wasn't she also like self-mutilating?
She was biting that,
gnawing on it,
gnawing on it, and it was burdensome for her. But this is my first amputation, and I actually was in on the surgery, and I was there when we, removed the leg. And I can't lie. I mean, with this first amputation, I thought to myself, I'm a little worried. I don't know how she's going to navigate this new world on 3 legs. And she was a big dog. And how was the family, going to handle her? So, she goes home in like 2-3 days. So I saw her again at suture removal, right? And so I see her, I'm walking down the hallway, and we catch each other's eyes. She sees me. She's a young chocolate lab, right? She breaks free from her parents. She runs down the hall. She jumps, hits me with her one remaining leg, like square in the chest, knocks me right to the ground, right? And then, like any young, good chocolate lab, she's kissing me and wrestling, with me and doing all the things that, a young chocolate lab would do. And her parents thanked me and said, thanks for giving us our dog back. And she was back, and she lived to be about 15. So that was a really life-altering moment for me to see how well she was doing.
Yeah, she was back, baby, right?
She was back.
Awesome.
With more force than ever.
Yeah, I several kind of phrases and such come to mind, thinking about these dogs. And one is, kind of figuring out life on life's terms, right? You never know life is going to, what cards are going to be dealt. And, and just like overcoming and continuing to move forward. And also so many of these dogs, especially with the congenital issues, are potential throwaways, that I've read online, several at very young ages, 3 weeks old or what have you, they notice deformities in limbs, and, it was recommended that they just be put down. And, but kudos to those like Domenick and these rescue organizations who are giving these differently abled animals second chances and allowing them to live to their full potential. So,
what do they do? What's their typical day like, Domenick?
Well, they get up very early. So they wake up around 5:30, 6 o'clock. And they are just raring to go, especially Lucky and Deuce. The two of them are very high energy. They are just in and out, in and out. We have an area in the yard that is fenced off, so they love to run around in the backyard. And, there's squirrels and rabbits and stuff back there that they can bark at. And, they're just dogs. Regular dogs. They're really no different than other dogs in my mind. Yeah. I know that they are special, but they don't have so many differences in terms of their daily routine than another dog might have. The only one dog that is a little more care is Lucky, because he is incontinent, and so I do have to help him go to the bathroom. But other than that, I would say they're just like any other dog. Cyrus is actually easier than most dogs because he is not as mobile as the others, so he doesn't go around too much. So I carry him around a lot. I carry him around like a football most of the day. Right. And, I'll put him outside, and when you put him outside, he will poop and pee right there, and then you pick him up and you bring him back in, and he's...
That's my kind of guy, actually. It's like my dog. I see that Cyrus has an Eddie's Wheels that did a really nice job with that front end wheelchair, and you don't often see that, and I'm not sure that people know that, that those are available for dogs that have those missing or malformed limbs in the front, so that we can make, or we have the ability to make them these front end wheelchairs, and Eddie's does a really nice job.
I think they're one of the few companies that actually offers that. And for our listeners, we certainly have explored carts and wheels and that sort of thing on another podcast episode, which is already published. And then in the future, we are releasing an episode that is an interview with Leslie Grinnell, who is one of the owners and founders of Eddie's Wheels. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, we actually brought Cyrus to Massachusetts, to Eddie's Wheels, to get measured, and it was actually kind of exciting because at the time they also had 2 dogs who were missing front legs. And
I met
they were running around, and it was great because I didn't know, what life would be like for Cyrus. So it was nice to see their dogs running around with the wheels. And, the one thing I would say, I don't have any special training or anything like that. I just have to learn, just like anybody else would, how to deal with each dog as their challenges are, brought to me. And so
right.
I just have to sort of experiment and find out. And it opens up lots of kind of inspiring people and stories for me. So I learn a lot by having these dogs too.
That's great. Yeah, they're all great teachers. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't seen the Instagram posts yet, Cyrus's eyes will just melt your heart. Oh, it's like he's looking into my soul, through the computer screen. Oh, love that.
Dog knows how to work it, Chris. I'm telling you.
Yeah. And then, you brought up, Domenick, about, learning each dog, and certainly they all have their individual personalities and temperaments, and certainly, physical challenges.
Yes.
Do you have an impression of what it may be easier biomechanically, or do you think that, as I do, that it's just kind of individual, and like what disability they're faced with, when it happened, were they, whether they're born with it or it tends to be a trauma later in life? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I believe, as you do, it's completely individual. I mean, I've had these 3 dogs, plus Festus was a 3-legged dog, and each one is completely different than the next. When they arrive on our doorstep, I don't know what to do with them. I remember when Lucky arrived. I mean, he was from Egypt, and I didn't know much about him at all. I didn't know how he would move. I didn't know how he would go to the bathroom. I didn't know anything, and I just had to learn from the dog and sort of listen to what his needs are and to learn what his personality is. And I've also learned that their needs will change over time. So, Festus, for instance, over time, he was able to do some things when he was younger and had to alter how he moved later in life. And, you just have to listen to the individual dog and figure out what they need. People keep asking me, well, does Deuce need wheels? Does Deuce need any kind of help? And at the moment, he doesn't need anything. He really doesn't. And I've asked lots of different doctors. Now, that might change over time, so I just have to be really attuned to, what's happening to him and, pay attention to if something alters and he might need help in the future.
Yeah. Oh, and Chris, I don't know if you've seen the videos of him running, but he can really get going. And so at this point, I don't see any need for any other mobility aids. I mean, that dog can run.
Yeah, he can run just as fast as a 4-legged dog. I take him to the dog park, and he can keep up with all the other dogs. When you walk him and he's on the leash, he pulls me just like any other dog. I mean, he could easily knock me over because he's strong and he really wants to go sometimes. And he is just as sturdy and stable. If you weren't looking at him, you would never know that there was any kind of balance question. He's just so solid.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. When you look at him, it doesn't make any sense. But when you feel him, he is just as solid as any other dog.
I have seen the videos when he's running out there, with the pack in the park. And like you said, Domenick, I'm sure there have been many a passerby that glances over, has no idea that this dog is functioning on 2 legs.
That's
and
right.
Not only can he run and run fast, but turns and cuts and plays and swoops and swirls, and I'm like, oh my gosh, his outer strength, I guess in Deuce's case, definitely matches his inner strength. We know that is a commonality, that all these dogs have inner strength, but he has incredible outer strength.
Can you imagine being at the park and just like that double take? Like, did I just see?
Have I gone mad?
Did I just go see this? Did I just see a 2-legged dog go right after the ball?
That happens all the time. And when people notice, they'll say, oh, a tripod. And I'll say, no, actually, he only has 2. And they always question me. They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, look at him."
Are you sure?
Yeah. So I mean, even when he's in front of you, a lot of people can't even conceive of what they're looking at. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it really is amazing. Domenick, do you remember there was a dog named Faith that was that was on Oprah years ago, and that was the first bipedal dog that I knew about. And I just remember Faith had back legs, and they taught her to stand up and kind of walk like a person. I mean, she looked like a person, and I just remember that was very transformative for me. I've never forgotten that dog and that image that I saw on the television. And I know Oprah even said that she was, I think, her favorite animal guest, of all time. And she really did a lot for the military community. I know you said that you go to a wing at the hospital where there are a lot of people that have had amputations, I'm sure for various reasons. And Faith seemed to kind of specialize in going to like military bases and different things like that, and hospitals where she interacted with military personnel that also had missing limbs, and I'm sure was very inspiring to them. And one fact that I saw was that she was actually given the, what do you call it? I want to say degree, but title.
The title?
Of sergeant.
Oh, gosh. Oh, boy.
And that 4,000 military personnel attended her induction ceremony as she became a sergeant. Isn't that cool?
That's cool.
Yes.
I know a quote from Faith's owner was that she thought that these animals, are willing to accept help when they need it and then pay it forward. So I think a lot of folks that have special needs animals are doing the kind of work that Domenick's doing with his three, going to hospitals and rehab centers and, military bases and so forth to pay it forward and just be so inspiring to all of us.
Now, Chris, I don't know, and Domenick, I'm dying to hear about this on a lighter note. I see that Deuce has his own trading card.
Yes.
Can we can trade cards?
Yes. So that trading card is from the Children's Hospital. So the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has a very large pet therapy program. There are upwards of 60 to 70 dogs, I think, and handlers now visiting the hospital. So each dog has their own trading card.
I love that.
When you visit a patient, you can give the patient a card, and then they can collect all the cards for the dogs that they see. And when you walk in a room, you'll see lots of cards all over the kids' walls and bulletin boards and things like that. And the kids absolutely love those trading cards.
Right. It gives them something to do too. We can get the cards and we can trade. And whose card did you get? And I got this card. That's fantastic.
Right. And they have statistics on the backside. They'll tell you a little bit about each dog. And it's really, really fun. And the hospital gets a professional photographer to come out and take really good photos. And they make great cards. And I love those cards. Cyrus also has his own card. Cyrus and Deuce do.
Hey, Kathy, I just want to make it clear that these are just for the dogs. You cannot get a trading card.
I don't want one with my face on it.
Nobody would want one with your
my trading card. But you guys have seen how cute my dog is, right? You guys have seen how cute Mac is. He could use his own trading card.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's fantastic. We see a fair amount of dogs, we're at our practice too, that are therapy dogs and that go to hospitals and rehab centers. And I'm wondering, for Deuce and Lucky and Cyrus, did they have to go through any particular, certification? Did they have to get their Canine Good Citizens? Did they have to, was there anything that they had to do to qualify to become, a therapy dog to go to the hospital? They certainly seem like they have the personalities for it, watching them on Instagram.
Yes, I mean, initially I adopted each of them because I thought that they would have the right temperament to be a therapy dog. But yes, they do have to be certified by specific organizations that are accepted by each hospital. So different hospitals accept different certifications. So I made sure that the places I wanted to visit, the dogs were being certified by the right organization for that hospital. So that means, weeks of getting ready for the certification test, and then the test itself has a number of different elements. Within each hospital, they may have their own specific kind of test. So, for instance, a children's hospital, in addition to requiring the certification, they also require their own testing annually, so that they're up to date every year, so that the dogs are always being evaluated and properly certified to be in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's also the policy at here at our Boston Children's Hospital, and I really like the fact that you said that you kind of matched the setting with their certification, because I've spoken to a number of my clients over the years who have considered making their dogs therapy dogs because they thought they'd be good candidates, but then became daunted by the process. But there are a myriad of certifications out there that can certainly match your dog as well, and what their strengths are. So
that's right. So, I mentioned that Deuce and Lucky have their cards at the Children's Hospital, and Deuce and Cyrus. Lucky doesn't, because he actually doesn't visit there. Lucky goes exclusively to Bryn Mawr Rehab Hospital, the one with the amputee clinic. That hospital accepts a different certification, and so Lucky was certified through that organization. And they actually tested him in the hospital itself. The evaluator came to the hospital and watched him. And in fact, she told me she's been doing that for about 20 years. She said in the 20 years that she's been doing that, she's never seen a dog get the reaction from patients that Lucky does. It is helpful to kind of work with the hospital, find out what their requirements are, and then work backwards from there to your dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you encourage our listeners out there to consider dogs that are differently abled in terms of orthopedic issues and missing limbs? Or do you think that, it takes a special person in a special situation?
I would absolutely encourage people to adopt dogs or any pets that are special needs pets. For a variety of reasons. I don't think you need any special kind of training or any special skills, other than to have a big heart, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I find often, as I've said, that my dogs are pretty much just like any other dog, and I don't see any difference in raising them than I would if I had a four-legged dog. So the actual work that it might take to have a special needs dog is not really any more than you might if you had any dog who, any dog is going to have issues that you have to deal with. You have to house train a dog, and you have all the same kinds of issues.
Right.
The difference, I think, is the payback is more enormous because first, special needs pets are harder to adopt out. So if you are taking in a dog like that, the chances are that many people will have overlooked that dog. So there is something nice in knowing that you helped save a soul that others may have looked past. And then, with my dogs anyway, and I think others would feel the same way, when you share your dogs with other people, you get such a warm reaction, and you are able to make people happy. It's just such a nice thing to know good. That, I could bring my dog somewhere and make somebody's day. I mean, that makes me feel terrific that I was able to, bring a smile on somebody's face, or especially like a child in the hospital, make a kid feel good, for an hour. During a dark time. And so it is something that is very rewarding, and there's, in my mind, no reason to stop you from adopting a dog or any pet that might have a bit of a difference from other animals.
Some type of impairment. Yeah, I think that what I like to tell people when they ask me about dogs that have some type of sensory or mobility impairment, I'm like, go meet them and give them a chance. Go meet them, and give them a chance, because again, you're right. The relationship between the human and animal, or humans and their dogs, is very intense, but it seems like it's a little bit more intensely bonding when you have an animal that has some type of impairment. And it's almost like, for me, when my blind dog is that almost became a oneness, that we were sort of this one entity because we were so intensely bonded. So there's a big payoff. There's a big reward. There's a big reward in having any dog, but there really is a big reward for having some type of dog that has some type of impairment.
Yes.
I agree.
Me too.
And you'd be surprised at what you're able to do that you think you wouldn't.
Right,
so,
right.
For years I used to say, I will never adopt a dog that you have to express the dog's bladder. That was always my line, the line I wasn't going to cross.
Yep.
I just can't do that. I'll do anything else, but I can't do that. And then Lucky arrived
and here we
in
are.
our house.
And you're eating your words.
And here we are.
And then the next thing you know, I'm like expressing his bladder 10 times a day, and I don't even think twice about it. Right. It's such a nothing.
Right.
I thought it was going to be something that was terrible and difficult and maybe even disgusting, and it's none of those things. It's just easy and simple and part of our routine now.
Yeah.
So,
and just as we say, these animals have such a way of adapting, we do too.
Right.
So as, different beings come into our lives, we can learn, we can adapt, we can figure it out, and it's a very symbiotic, relationship.
Right.
You mentioned earlier too, how good it makes you feel when you make someone's day. And I know they've done studies about philanthropy in that way, right? Like, why would somebody want to give away their fortune, or even, give somebody in the coffee line, $5 to get their coffee when they forgot their wallet? Because it makes us feel good.
It feels good.
It changes our brain chemistry and all of that. So, you get to experience that on a daily basis, several times a day, Domenick. So I'm sure a lot of people are jealous of that.
Well, and it probably feels good for the dogs too, to get that. They get that time out with Domenick. They get attention at the hospital. And people probably make a little fuss, and that's fun if you're a dog. That's fun,
I always say it's a win-win, that everybody benefits from it. The patients in the hospital, or anyone you might encounter if you took the dog for a walk. The dog is feeling great. Me as their handler is feeling good, so it's just a good situation all around.
Yeah. You also said that, you've really learned to listen to each individual pet in your household, and you have, quote, able-bodied and those that aren't. And I think that's a lesson to all of us as pet owners and handlers and caregivers, is really learning to communicate, with our furry family members, and listening. That's a skill that I think sometimes needs to be honed a little bit, but we all have that capability.
I love that you use that Domenick uses the term listening, and listening to them, and that's exactly what we need to do. We need to listen.
Because they'll tell you. They'll tell you. You just have to be speaking their language, I think.
That's right. Or we have to be plugged in, right? So Domenick, as we kind of wrap it up, is there a takeaway message? Is there one thing that you would like to convey to the audience about having a dog that's missing limbs? Is there one thing you'd like to share with everyone?
Well, as I've been saying, I've learned so much from these dogs, and I think that if anyone is considering adopting a special needs dog, or equally as important is anyone that might have an animal that they'd have to be considering an amputation and thinking, this is just going to be too hard or too much, or in the end, in my mind, the rewards are enormous for you personally, and the dog will be okay. The
Right.
dog is going
More than
to,
okay. Yeah.
more than okay. I get messages from people all the time on the internet when they see the videos of the dogs telling me how cruel and awful they think it is that these dogs are allowed to live. And I always think if you spent 5 minutes with the dog, you would not feel that way at all. These dogs are not in the least bit unhappy, in pain. They're just happy-go-lucky, fun-loving dogs.
They're just dogs.
Living in the moment.
Dogs being dogs. There's always, I suppose there's always someone out there that's going to have something negative to say about that. But if anybody who follows these dogs, and they should know not to feel sorry for them.
Right. I always
should know
say
not
that.
to feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
If we can show people too, if we can show more people how well these dogs adapt. Can you imagine if we can change just one person's mind about living with a dog with an amputation, that you might save a dog's life? Maybe somebody who's now willing, hey, I saw 3 dogs and only have 2 legs, and they're fine.
1 leg's nothing.
Right. That's right. That's right. That we could change their mind about it. Right.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, these guys are definitely worth fighting for. We just can never underestimate their capabilities. And to kind of sum it up, they are not only survivors, but they thrive. They don't just survive, they thrive. And I think that's just the greatest message of all. So.
Yeah. So Domenick, can you let people know where they can follow Cyrus, Lucky, and Deuce? Where can they follow you, or where can they find you?
Well, we are all over social media now, especially since we've been at home during this pandemic. I've been putting more and more of them online so they can be sort of online therapy dogs. So they're you can find them at 2 Leg Dogs, as you said, the number 2 Leg Dogs, on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok.
Wow, you got them all.
TikTok. I know. Now I've got to go join them on Facebook and YouTube as well. I'm going to join that right away. Domenick, I can't thank you enough. And like I said, I get on Instagram and I follow a lot of differently able dogs, and I gotta tell you, sometimes I find myself going, oh yeah, I'm gonna check in and see what Cyrus, Lucky, and Deuce are doing today. I'm gonna check in before I go to bed, see what's happening. Because they really do. They make my day. They're fantastic.
And Domenick, keep doing what you're doing. Get the word out there. Again, can't thank you enough, and hopefully the listeners of our podcast will help spread that message as well.
Well, I really appreciate all of that. Your kind words mean a lot, and I'm so happy that you found us and that you're following the dog. That's so great.
Me too.
All right. Thanks again, Domenick.
Thank you, Domenick.
All right.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show. Follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at Petability Podcast.
For more information about Kathy's books and living with blind dogs, please go to enableyourpet.com. Thank you, and please tune in next time.